Recorded June 10th, 2024. Good afternoon, Ray. Good afternoon, Rodney. How are you doing?
All right. All right. All right. All right.
All
How are
right,
you
all right.
doing?
I like that.
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Life is fair. Unless something bad happens to me first, then it's not fair.
Life is fair. I would suggest life is not fair. Just in general. But that you just deal with it. You know it's unfair. You just, you know, you adapt and
Yeah,
continue.
that's the thing. You just
Yep.
adapt.
It
Like I'm
just
doing.
is. Yeah, it's arbitrary. It is. It is random. It is chaotic.
Yeah, that's okay though. And we got Andrew saying, "Evening, Rod, Edward, Brody
And look at that. Andrew has joined us from X.
from X." There you
I
go.
told you that, right? So X, for the people that are listening in or watching, X totally surprised me, is our largest live audience. Each episode, I think between 250 and 300 people join live as the audience as part of X. I thought it would be something like YouTube or maybe Twitch, which we'll talk about Twitch in a second, but or something, maybe even LinkedIn, but it's actually X, which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what Andrew did with the // U0026 Ray. I'm losing the reference on that, Andrew. I'm having a day. Give me a little bit. Can I have a clue? uh, so
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Noodle,
get that. I don't know that one either. Andrew is, I think he's trying to reprogram our show.
nah, something. I can't discount my network because it has been super flaky. So someone cut the main fiber feed into our neighborhood early last week.
Mm.
And then it would be the time I'm changing yet another firewall out. So too many random variables. But no. There's no delay. It's just a little bit of something. And then I'm going to change the stupid mic out. I'm going to get rid of
Headset.
these Bluetooth things. I'm just going to go straight to this Yeti that Frank had me spend all this money on. I just don't like the boom mount the way Rod has it. I think I'm just going
Yeah. One of these days it'll be built in. It's like,
yeah.
Elon's little
Right with the Neuralink.
brain thing. They'll have, you'll just have wear a mask with.
Mike Link. Yeah.
So Noodle says, I hope it, as I scratch my nose on live TV, Noodle says, I hope it's not another Meraki. It is, Noodle. I got another free one to evaluate since I wrote them a nice little blog and a couple other things.
They give those things away. I don't even think they even care to charge for them anymore.
Let's start with Ray. Ray, how was it's sort of funny asking, what have you been doing this week, which is how we did the show for almost 2 years, because Wednesday you've had 2 days of work. Monday, you haven't done anything. So it's more like, if you did work on the weekend, why were you? And the question is more along that, what'd you do interesting this weekend? Or maybe you did something Friday or Saturday or something. I don't know. But Ray, anything interesting to talk about? We'll go with you first.
Or just do what you want.
Do it.
I don't care.
From the manifesto of Ray, the way of Wolfram. Let's see. What have I done over the week? I spent a lot of family time with my daughter. I've been on this personal journey of mine. I've been through some medical situations. Mental health is something that is super important to me as well. It's paramount. My daughter is graduating daycare.
Oh, wow.
So there's sharp echo there, booming echo, right? And so we're preparing her for kindergarten. So we had like this super impromptu meet and greet. And I was supposed to actually travel this week, but I had to adjust the schedule because my co-parent had some commitments for work. So it was really, I got some extra time with my daughter, took her to a play date. We went to the play zone. So usually it's like week on, week off between me and her dad, but I got like 2 weeks, right? And now I'll have this week. So it's been really rewarding. So even though there's some kind of recalibration there from a work perspective. Like I was really excited to get to go to a conference this week. Having to shift it just made sense because family always comes first. So yeah, it was very productive, but from a mom point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess as I go back and recant that last statement, I guess if we haven't talked since Monday, maybe Monday is the best the day to ask what you've done, because now you got work between this Monday and the next show. So between last Monday and today, as far as work, what did you break?
What have I broken? As hearts and spirits, Ed. Let's see. Well, we are gearing up for the new fiscal year, so we got some change of assignments coming through. Really exciting stuff. I'm focused on the Defender Expert service, and so my focus will actually shift slightly, but it's stuff that I kind of started my career doing here at Microsoft. So I'm really stoked for it. So getting back with my crew, getting the old gang back together. So a lot of planning and prep for hitting the ground running for July. So a lot of stuff to look out for on that end. What about you?
Oh, yeah, lots of personal stuff. Wife had, arm surgery, so I've been playing doctor and nurse and caretaker and cook and cleaner and spider killer and clothes folder and all those things. And I absolutely love it. That's cool. Did a little bit of running, trying to get in shape like Rod, but slow, steady. For work, even though Noodle hates it, I sit on one of those sort of testing advisory committees for Meraki. Been on there forever. So I got it's not a newer device, but they always send me like a little, small device to have and a license. So I got a new MX65 to go with the 64. I was hoping to give me something like one of the MX 100s or 120s, a big box, but SMB stuff, right? It works great. It has some features that I didn't know. So playing with that. What else did I do? Microsoft centric. Yeah, was looking at something in my environment and finally got the Sentinel integration with the one SOC XDR thing squared away. And so now I can get all the Defender telemetry inside. The Sentinel telemetry inside of that. It was a connector that wouldn't disconnect. And finally, I got some help. They took it off. What else? Studied a little bit, read some stuff, did some AD stuff, did some Defender for cloud stuff, some CNAP testing and a couple things around that. Just a hodgepodge of stuff. Last week was just a week of geeking. Finally caught up on all Rod's, Gazillion newsletters that came in. And I got a folder. That's probably what's crashing my stuff is trying to sync my mailbox. So you want to give Copilot a run for his money. I literally have 439 unread things from Rod. I chose to go back and mark them as unread.
I wondered why you hadn't responded.
Oh, I went back and you didn't put anything in there, and I'll tell you how I know.
Don't worry, we made decisions without you.
Yeah, but this is just from your
I'm just kidding.
your
the newsletter stuff. Okay.
The newsletters.
Yeah.
So I went back and marked them all unread, and I told Copilot for 365. I said, summarize all of this. Every one of these emails will give me a summarization of what Rod is talking about. It's still working. So
came back with one word: nonsense.
Nonsense. Like, yeah, it actually came at the word tomfoolery. And so
hijinks, I like that word. Shenanigans. Yeah. Yes.
Those aren't used quite as much as they should be these days.
Yeah. Gonna add a second circuit to the house. Love to spend money on stuff like that. You guys know it, but the way stuff is being cut up and down the neighborhood, I'm gonna go ahead and get one of those Verizon 5G whole house. Cool part about it, it'll let you use it for 30 days to see if you're satisfied with it. Now I told him I'll make a deal with him. I said, I don't want the commercial. I want the business one. So then I'll have two circuits in the house. It's on a low balance. I put all the personal stuff on one segment, some VLAN, put it on the old Meraki stuff, and then put all my lab and work stuff on another one. So I think that's it. I got a pile of stuff over there to do, but I'll get to it. And Ryan, what you say you did? Nothing?
Yeah, I don't usually do anything. I just I don't know. They tend to still pay me, and but no. What did I do last week? So I did a video for Donna Sarkar for her Copilot Hub. I did a video for Heike for the virtual ninja show. I think that one's released already. The other one is not. Working on this new Copilot Hub that we have, and I'm doing all the Copilot for security stuff. So there's a lot of content that's going into that, either creation or curation. The prompting workshop will be done this week, by the way. That will be available. Anyone can take this co-prompting workshop for Copilot for security and deliver it in their organization, or partners can deliver it to their customers, or Microsoft people are already starting to pull bits and pieces out to create their own stuff. And that's okay. That's what we're supposed to do. This next weekend, our family, we're headed to Amish country. We do this a couple times a year because for those that aren't aware, my best friend is a chiropractor to the Amish. I always joke that he's like Dr. Quinn, medicine woman. Same type of perspective, same type of thing, but the Amish love their chiropractic services. I do want to mention really quickly though, before we bring on our guest, my wife today celebrated her 500th Pilates class, and they gave her a certificate. They gave her a special T-shirt, these gold socks. So
Gold socks?
Gold sock. Well, not
like
the kind
bronze socks, or actually
not the kind you would, not the kind you'd put
metallic.
in a deposit box, but the kind you would wear. They're still, you could wash them. I'm sure there'll still be gold afterwards, but yeah.
Is she an instructor or a participant?
So my wife taught. She was an instructor for several years, but then life got busy. But now she's just going back, and she completed her 500th actual class doing this particular class. So awesome. Yeah, super impressive.
So before we get our guest on, everybody's going through, and I got some show notes and everything. I think I'll hold on to them. We'll put them at the back end of the show. I came across some very good links that are pretty decent around some KQL queries, some Microsoft Learn stuff. So to all our listeners, once our guest departs, hang tough for a little bit. We'll leave enough time in the show to talk about it. So some cool links we'll share with you guys.
One tidbit of administrivia though, before we bring on our guest. I know a lot of folks, they join the show live through Twitch. We had a team meeting today, and we're probably going to deprecate Twitch in the near future. So YouTube, LinkedIn, and X will be your platforms to access the show live from here on out.
Yeah. So Frank and I, the first medium that we broadcast the show on was the recording of the audio for a podcast venue, but the first live place was Twitch. So we cut our video chops on Twitch, but we're doing this to reduce the amount of places purposely that people have to sort of, feel as though they're compelled to be on that platform in case they miss something. There'll be no loss in information fidelity. I just think that Twitch is just one more administrative thing that we have to do. So,
well, we've kind of outgrown it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, we've outgrown it. So, big shout out to Twitch. No love lost. We're good. We're just going to go ahead and stay with the ones that we have. And the other thing is, don't feel special, Twitch. We got rid of Facebook too, or Meta, or whatever you want to call that.
Well, we don't have to talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even mess with that. All right. So we do have a guest from Disney, Mr. Disney.
He's in the Disney family. Yeah.
He's in the Disney family. So welcome to the show, sir. And you're on mute, and it's a hell of a drug if you don't turn it off. It sounds like you're not talking to anybody.
He's looking for it. I tell you what, I think maybe I can unmute your guest because they chose to mute themselves. There you go.
I got it. Happens to us all.
Oh, yeah.
Well, welcome to the show, Mr. Disney. You heard this mindless banter that we do on here. I'm surprised you didn't change your mind and sneak out the back door. But thanks for staying. And would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, who you are, what you do, and and cybersecurity, why everybody should sort of listen to what you have to say today.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Robert Disney, obviously. I'm a cybersecurity technical specialist currently with Microsoft Federal, serving the United States Army team. So providing them with zero trust security solutions and helping them to secure their enterprise. I was formerly working with the Marine Corps and Navy teams under Microsoft Federal, and I've been here for about 3 years now. I'm looking, hopefully in the near future, looking to make a transition over into AI. I've put a lot of effort into working with AI and into following up my master's in cybersecurity currently with a second master's in AI engineering. So not just learning to poke around with it and play around with it and use it in interfaces, but learning all the technologies and the algorithms and the programming that goes in underneath it and all the technologies that enable it. So it's been a pretty cool journey. I said I did that for about 3 years, or for the last 3 years. Prior to that, I did 21 years in the military. I was a special operator. I was an Air Force pararescueman. Had a pretty eventful career. Maybe conversation for another time over some not water, but
Okay.
be a good conversation for another day. But I followed that career up with essentially I retired to a mountaintop in Colorado, and I was sitting up there, and I found myself playing around with servers every day. I ended up buying a rack of servers, had a bunch of decommissioned servers, and just took my master's in cybersecurity training and wanted to really start putting pen to paper or hand to keyboard and start working with those. So at some point, I just went from, the just general virtualization, general IT, to deploying environments, virtualization, containerization, and then at some point found myself deploying an OpenStack cloud to them and doing by hand configuration of an OpenStack cloud in my basement, and then would deploy an enterprise environment to it. And then I would spend all day penetration testing it and hardening it. And that was kind of my routine for, honestly, a couple of years, until at some point a buddy who works for Microsoft called me and said, I hear you doing some things up there with servers. Can you tell me about that? And when I did, he said, you're doing this and you're kind of retired up there in the mountains. Maybe you could let, Microsoft pay to do some of that instead. So I thought, why not try my hand at the enterprise side of it, and found the right position with as a cybersecurity technical specialist.
Mhm. Well, first, thank you for that intro, and thank you for your service. 10 years Navy, submariner, the things
Awesome.
I can talk about at least in one in one of my capacities. And you came in at just the right time. You got the Federal just as that notorious Jeffrey Sluggenberger left and came over to the GBB side. I don't know if you know Jeff Sluggenberger.
You're talking Jeff Schnegelberger?
Snuggleberger. I call him
Yeah,
Snuggleberger.
Jeff Schnegatron, right? So Jeff Schnegs is actually the individual that got me on at Microsoft.
Ah, look at that.
Yep.
Yeah, Jeff's good folks, man.
Yep. So it was Ryan Socal, a former Air Force, former Air Force network warfare officer, called me and said, "What are you doing up there with your time?" And when I told him, he said, "I'll be honest, you sound pretty technical, and I need to call a friend, phone in a friend." And Schnegs is the one that he called in, and Schnegs basically put me through my paces and told Ryan, well, he doesn't know Microsoft, but he knows security and he knows IT. So let's look at what we can do, and helped me build a resume, and ended up passing it to a hiring manager. And that's actually how I got hired. I owe Jeff Schnegelberger my new career, honestly.
Yeah. Schnegelberger worked. We were in the same team like this, but we used to be on the same. We'll just say same platoon for a while before we're in the same battalion now. We're not the platoon, so good thing, Schnegelberger, if you listen to the show, come back on, man, for another show. So you're over there in Federal.
Yep.
And the running joke among all the services at Microsoft is it in Gov yet? Because I covered Federal as a GBB before Schnegelberger came over. Active clearance, he knew he had more connections, so it made sense for me to move on and cover another, vertical while he took care of that, right?
Sure.
But the joke he always says is it in Gov, right? Because it seems
I
to
think
be
that's what everybody asks, right?
Is it in
As
Gov?
they see a feature come out in commercial, and working with Sentinel for so long, it was constant. Well, does that work in Gov yet? And obviously, always the answer is no.
So what is your experience there? It sounds like the entirety of your time here, you've been working at Gov. And when I did do it, I thought it was pretty cool. DISA, CISA, so-called command, all those things. You get to have the good phone calls, right? But what's your experience been there? Are you still hearing that? Man, I wish that feature was there, or because it sounds like you're covering the services, the armed services division primarily, right?
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. It's still the same thing. I mean, trying to figure out feature parity is always is always the bane of our existence. And just because something's released, obviously in that cloud, doesn't mean that it's compatible yet with everything else that's there. Because one feature that might be needed to fully integrate that service into another service also might not be available in that cloud. So you just have to stay on top of it and hit roadmap briefings and try and stay in touch with the product group and our GBBs, our liaison between us and the product group to stay on top of all that. Yeah.
So you mention, and this is where I want to get to, because I think this is primary reason why you're here. You mentioned, right, your entrance to Microsoft was, messing around with cybersecurity stuff on top of a mountain somewhere, but that's another story, I guess. But now you want to go into AI. And what has led you to want to do that? Because you and I talked, was it 2-3 months ago? And the things that you showed me at that point, I kind of just scratched my head and like, man, how is he doing that stuff? And it's 3 months later. I'm sure you're doing some other things that are even more significant. So what's that like?
Sure. It's a lot of trial and error. I learned more by failing and trying it again than by doing it once and getting it right and following the manual. So a whole lot of trial and error, and a lot of searching online to find out how things work and take things apart and try to put them back together in a different way to add function. And I think so. I started my own journey with AI. I would say a long time ago. I started with. I got interested in it the first time I read Ray Kurzweil's 2005 book, The Singularity is Near. So it was a book all about kind of where technology is going and how we'll eventually hit an exponential curve, and how technology progresses and kind of where AI will eventually take us with, a fusion of human intelligence with artificial intelligence and robotics, genetics, nanotechnology. It was just such an incredible exploration of where tech goes, how it progresses, and what he saw as the end result of a lot of that. And what's wild is that now, almost 20 years later, a lot of his predictions are right on path, right on track with kind of where we are with AGI or coming up on AGI and with generative AI. So that got me interested enough to read his follow-on book, which was How to Create a Mind. And if the one talked about where things are going, How to Create a Mind really talked about how we get there. And it was about kind of looking at how neural net architectures mirror the brain. And I thought, man, that sounds kind of cool. So at that point, I kind of started playing around with TensorFlow, PyTorch, some of the other technologies that were out there for creating AI algorithms, and doing it up in a cabin in the mountains, with a server rack in my basement.
Part of the process.
Yeah, it was all part of it because I had nothing to focus on, but trying things all day long and having to not work. For example, you can build a stock prediction algorithm with TensorFlow. It's just not very accurate.
Forgive me for being a little bit of a stalker of your LinkedIn, but you are a prolific poster and very powerful content, right? So you have both the technical material and you have inspirational content as well. I'm curious though, right? So you're not just a tinkerer, you are an educator, right?
Yeah.
So the stuff that you do and the stuff that you're figuring out, once you get that solution, it seems that you're also empowering others with the process. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, a movie called Lucy. Near the end of it, Morgan Freeman's character is talking to Scarlett Johansson's character. She's talking about having all this knowledge because she's this advanced AI and is becoming super intelligent. And she asked him, what do I do with all of this? And he went down a path of at our core, we're all DNA. DNA replicates itself and passes on its own genetic knowledge to the next generation. And he said, what do you do with it? Pass it on. And truly, I think that passing on information and passing on the lessons that you've learned are truly the meaning of life. I heard it once said that a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from other people's mistakes. And I just want to help empower people to become wise men and women.
That was extraordinary. I was not expecting to forget this. That was beautiful. That was eloquent, and it is very compelling. Thank you, Robert. I'm going to add a little bit of levity just because I was like, wow, amazing. You recently won the AI pitch competition. Is that accurate? Can you talk to us a little bit about your process behind that?
I may or may not have also become a master in prompt engineering. And it does a pretty good job with it. No, I after a series of interesting events early in my career in the military, which you can read about on my LinkedIn page, I became a public speaker, an inspirational public speaker on the topic of resilience and leadership. And along the way, ended up professionalizing that by taking acting classes so that I could become a better public speaker. But in the process, fell in love with the process of acting as well. So being in front of a camera and negotiating, this space is always a lot of fun, and I enjoy doing it, whether it's sharing videos or motivational speaking as well.
So it had nothing to do with your last name. You had to live up to the
I have had to answer questions about my last name my whole life.
It's overshadowed you.
It's actually a really cool name. I wish I had that. That would be. I could just go so far with that. That would be awesome.
Yeah, I don't get any kind of discounts, but I do get rock star treatment at the parks and the cruises because they assume that I'm one of the owners or one of the founders, and they just treat me accordingly.
You're like the secret shopper at the parks, and they're like trying to treat you full respect.
Yeah. They don't know if you're a distant cousin, first cousin. Better to be safe than sorry. Always be safe than sorry. I wish my last name worked that way in Walmart, but it doesn't. So there you go. It doesn't go that route. And so, why federal? Other than the obvious, there was a job opening, military experience. Where you're, I don't know how long you were separated from the military, but was it because you still had active clearances, or were you? Because it sounds like you went to the mountains. You're still viable for a clearance if you had to get it, right? It's a pain in the ass, but to go back and get it again. Is that the reason that you sort of landed in federal? It was an open position plus that, or was just, hey, it's open, I'm military, I know how to jive, I know how to talk the talk. Is that how you landed into that position?
Part of it, I think. But the position that I applied for obviously was with Fed, and I immediately got put on, I said, the Navy and Marine Corps team, which made sense because obviously of my background, I understand military structure, I understand military lingo, and generally understand the customer. But I also, as a retired E9 and former, from tactical level, operational level, and then a strategic executive in the Air Force at that level, I learned kind of how the service works, but it also gave me insights into where a lot of the capability or the requirement gaps are, and understanding tech and understanding cybersecurity and AI and the force multiplying capability of AI to be able to lift more than you can by yourself. Inspired me really to hopefully give that to the Department of Defense, to be able to take what I used to do and the warfighters in the field who are out there doing the job and having to do it with less equipment, less funding, less whatever, and to be able to buy them something back that they can never, ever buyback no matter how much money we throw at it. There's 86,400 seconds in a day. And no matter how much money I throw at that problem, I can never buy one more. So there's a limited number of seconds in any given day. And AI has the potential to give them some of those seconds back that they would otherwise be doing on tasks that can be automated by AI.
Well, and that's an interesting, because it is Fed. It is, you are talking about DoD. What's the acceptance? Because you're working on the AI stuff. Obviously, this is interest to you enough to kind of pivot your career potentially. What's the acceptance for these feds, the stuff that you're working on? Are you working on this just to show them that it is possible, or are you working on this because they are acceptant of what it is, or they want to be able to use or want to be able to take advantage of that, being able to get more out of their day?
I think that some of the same cultural either resistance or problem or lack of adoption is in a lot of times coming from a position of not knowing the right question to ask. I mean, do you even know what applications or what functions within your organization that you could potentially automate with an AI service, doing either generation, creation, massive analysis, and even does it require AI? I have a lot of people, I've heard people ask for an AI application to do something that may be better suited for just a little bit of data science. Just condition a data set, filter some things out, and do a query type search versus, hey, let's take all this information and just try to throw it at an AI solution. And I heard once said that, never use a sledgehammer to kill a mosquito. And AI certainly is a sledgehammer of an application, and maybe not everything requires it. So, however, I would say, Rod, that a lot of the services, I mean, I don't even know right now if a provisional authority to operate has even hit the DoD yet, or Azure OpenAI services. So even though it's there in Gov, maybe the Department of Defense just can't use it yet. So I think we still have some, we're still working through some of those hurdles.
Yeah, it's challenging, but at the same time, you have to look at how they throw it on there, the skilling, the sense of priority is accelerated when you throw in a matter of national security, right? Because you're not using, you can bet that the other world powers, you have in my definition, and please correct me, Master Chief Disney, that there are four main categories of superpowers: traditional military, whether they be nuclear or conventional; financial, right? And now you're starting to see cyber, right? Inside of this, you don't have to have a country of a lot of native residents of that country to be considered a superpower. Numbers don't matter anymore. It's skill and access to availability and data, right? So you're starting to see different types of superpower, monikers showing up, and cyber is one. And don't confuse cyber with AI. They're not mutually inclusive. You're going to have AI superpowers these days. Right now, it seems to be limited to companies that can afford the massive compute and the hard to get so-called GPUs necessary. And I believe that in itself is going to remedy itself pretty soon. NVIDIA has sort of like back into something that they didn't know they have. Don't let anybody in NVIDIA fool you that they knew that this was coming. They were making chips for gamers. And all of a sudden, like, man, this fractal compute can do this. So let's go ahead and put this in here. So you think that AI is going to have a pivotal way in the way that we do warfare?
It's going to change. I think it's going to change everything about the way we do warfare. I think it's especially going to change the way we do both offensive and defensive operations. And I'm going to show a reason why I feel that way. But just to talk through it generally, I wrote a Python script that essentially writes Python scripts. So the way it works is I ask it to write a script to perform a certain function. Hey, write a script that will write hello world. It takes that script, that prompt, sends it to generative AI, which returns the script. but I do it in a way with code that I learned that every time it returns its response, it does it in a certain format. So I just figured out, well, then I could write a script that parses out that and writes it to another Python script and then execute it, read the results of it, and then have it go back in and say, based on what you were asked to do, the script you wrote, and the results of its execution, are you satisfied? If yes, respond only the word satisfied. If not, if no, revise the code and to achieve the objective. And no kidding, I watched it as I gave it more complex tasks over and over. It would chew through them one phase after another until, no kidding, it at some point responded with, AI is satisfied with the script. And then I can execute that script, and no kidding, it works. So let me explain something about what I just said. I asked a Python script to send a prompt to a Python, essentially a Python application, which then writes back Python code. It writes, executes, revises, and optimizes Python code. So even developers are going to be able to use something like this. Now, I'm just one guy sitting in my cabin or my mom's basement or what. I'm not actually in a cabin or mom's basement anymore, but one guy working on this by myself. But I imagine if instead I said, accomplish initial reconnaissance of a particular network. And now it's going to write a Python script that does that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's say I now orchestrate that with a higher level Python script, or put it in a while loop and say, for each phase of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, a script that will execute that. So now I've created an app that will walk through all the phases of MITRE ATT&CK. Now, what if let's containerize it, Dockerize it. Let's deploy it to a K8s cluster. Let's scale it out to 1,000, 10,000. How about 1 million individual instances? That's 1 million hackers working on each phase of the MITRE ATT&CK framework all at the same time until it accomplishes it. And then it reports back that it's done it, and the orchestrator sends it back out and says, okay, start on phase 2. And no kidding, that capability to scale out, while it does require nation state level funding, may not require nation state level personnel acting on it. And it could be that could be what we're looking at as cybersecurity professionals trying to defend our environments against that kind of threat. And the only way we're going to be able to respond in kind to that kind of a threat is to start applying AI in kind in our cybersecurity operations. That's part of why I kind of started down the path of some of the things I'll show today.
Yeah, AI is a threat, but also AI is the tool to combat that threat. What happens when those two AIs meet in the middle and they become friends?
Rod, you can use a hammer to build a house or to smash a skull. Yeah. It's all in the intent of the person wielding the tool.
Yeah. We said it on a few shows. It's a baseball bat a weapon. It's according who has it. Right?
Right.
If you are paisano and you got a baseball bat, it's probably a weapon. There I go, generalizing. Hey, you mentioned it twice. You had something to show. I'm interested in seeing, sir.
Oh, yeah,
awesome.
Absolutely.
You mind if I present?
I do not mind. Rod has to walk you through this. It's not Teams, so you do a little re-education.
Well, present, then share your screen, then I'll push the screen to live here when you're ready.
Yep. Share screen. Go show these tips again. Make sure there's nothing on my screen that shouldn't be. No work stuff. Window. There we go. How about this? Do folks usually share their entire screen or just a tab or what?
You can still choose a window. You can sort of choose a window.
All right. Trying to share my screen, and it's hating on me. For some reason, it doesn't want to let me share my VS Code. Let's see if it'll let me do that.
Share the screen that you can, and then just drag that over to that window.
All right, I'm being silly, and I should be sharing. Sharing this window here.
All right. And
all right, cool. Yes. All right, so we're up. Awesome. So I went down a little bit of a journey a while back. Is my audio and video still coming
Yes.
through? Unlike y'all getting fiber internet, I'm sitting on Starlink, so I'm sipping it through a straw, hoping that my video doesn't overwhelm it. We still good?
We're
Yes.
good.
Cool. All right. So let's so I could open the Copilot piece here and ask me anything. But what you don't see on here anymore is that there's actually a text entry limitation on this.
Right.
And it used to be 2,000 characters. Well, 2,000 characters. Well, the backing algorithm of this is ostensibly the GPT-4 algorithm, which had something like 32K or 32,000 tokens. I learned 1,000 tokens is about 750 words. So whatever the token limitation is, you should be able to throw at it up to about 3/4 of that in words worth of written word for analysis. I think they're mostly limited still to about 4,000 tokens in response, or about 3,000 words. Anybody who's really played around with it could probably corroborate that or agree with that. But ultimately, what you end up having to do is break up a large prompt into little bitty pieces to get the response that you want. And I wanted to figure out how to do more with that. So I learned about the Copilot app. So the copilot.microsoft.com, when you land here at the Copilot page, I would bounce over into Notebook. And now I had the ability to, it used to say here, 18,000 total characters. They don't tell you how many characters you can put in there now, but I can tell you it's probably about 18,000 characters, or at least it was until recently. And what I mean is, if I try to paste 25,000 characters here, well, it's not gonna work. Now, why is that of an issue? Well, 2,000 characters at an average of about 5 characters per word, typical, is going to be only about 400 words. Well, I already said with a 128K model, the GPT-4 1106 preview model can take 128,000 tokens. That's 96,000 words, 350 typewritten pages of context that I should be able to use and interact with these powerful, powerful models. So I decided to figure out, okay, well, how could I overcome the character limitation? And maybe I could do that through interacting with a model via an API. So let me back up a little bit. So if you go into the, if I went in, or when I did go into the OpenAI interface, I went and looked, and there's API keys. And you can download an API key, and that'll allow you to, or copy and paste your API key in your code, which allows you to broker that transaction or secure your transaction between your code and the API of OpenAI. So I asked in here something like, and anybody can do this, write a Python script that will allow me to enter into a two-way conversation with, in this case, I use ChatGPT, and it responded and basically wrote a Python script. Sure, certainly I can do that. Here's your Python script. And certainly below, it's thinking about it. Can you guys still hear me while this thing's working?
Yes.
Cool. So it responded there, mock-up Python script. And a few iterations of this, you can eventually get it right and get your API key in there and get the model that you want to connect to. Ultimately, you could do this with code. So we'll just jump into an example of code. So for under my OpenAI, I go to gpt.py. Essentially, what you're looking at is a Python script that will allow me to enter into a conversation with ChatGPT. So and I should have done this beforehand, and I didn't. Let's see, I think we're under general /bin/activate. Cool. All right, so now I should be able to Python gpt4.py. What is your request? I always ask it the same question first, just to make sure it's answering correctly. What is the capital of France? I imagine they think I have a thing with Paris. Cool. So the capital of France is Paris. So now I know with this particular script that I'm communicating directly with ChatGPT. through its API. In this case, though, if you look at the way this script is written, instead of using what I got from the Copilot answer, it would have answered from OpenAI import OpenAI. In this case, this says import Azure OpenAI. So it's still from the OpenAI library. It's throwing the OpenAI module or Azure OpenAI module, which requires some other authentication keys or variables to be able to communicate with an Azure OpenAI model. And that's what I'm doing here, is communicating directly with an Azure OpenAI model. So this is staying within my environment, within my enterprise. I'm not reaching out, passing a prompt, even though it's over HTTPS, of course. Is it secure? Sure. But you're sending it outside to OpenAI. In this case, it's staying within your Azure environment, and I'm able to hit that API and use an Azure OpenAI model there. So I thought, okay, well, now I'll try, using my 96,000 words of context, and I copied and pasted a lot of things into this terminal, and it told me that I couldn't paste more than, a certain number of characters in the terminal either. So I asked, believe it or not, I asked Copilot, I asked it, how could I overcome the token limit or the character entry limitation of a terminal to communicate with an OpenAI model? And it responded, what if instead you called the contents of a document, a text document, and then sent that as your prompt? So instead of having to type it into a terminal where the terminal is actually the bottleneck, instead we're just going to call the contents of a document, and we're going to throw a ton of information at it, and it's going to pull that into memory in Python and then send that to ChatGPT or to OpenAI, Azure OpenAI services directly as our prompt. So I thought, man, what a cool capability.
Intelligence finds a way. Yeah, like that's wild.
Well, it goes upon the self-doubt that a lot of folks go, well, that's, when someone tries something, they go, well, that's not going to work. Well, you talk yourself out of it, right? So you don't have these biological biases against failure, right? Just throw the idea. But yeah, I think this is something that, Rod, I don't know if you remember or not, you and I had something similar, and you had showed me where you figured out, hey, we can reference a document, and the throttling is inherent in the parsing of the document, so you don't choke it. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get it to bring up 800.207 zero trust architecture, and it's like screaming at me. And I'm not sure why. And the reason I was going to do that,
have too much fun. It's like too much excitement.
You need to upgrade your mom's network.
Yeah.
Apparently I need to talk mom out of Starlink. Nah, it actually works really well. Just for, hey, looky there. It's not going to Bingle. Bing's not working for me.
Bingle.
Oh man. All right, let's see here. I think, yeah, it's not wanting to bring that up. That's okay. So essentially what I'm doing is using that capability to call the contents of a whole document and send the contents of the document as a prompt to ChatGPT. To Azure OpenAI, to a GPT model. So what I was doing was taking 800.207 and I just plug it into this doc.txt, and then the contents of that end up getting sent to the Azure OpenAI model as the prompt. And I can copy as much information into this essentially as I want, up to that maximum token limitation of about 96,000 words, depending on which model I'm using. Does this make sense so far? Kind of what the process is to get where we're at now?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not unfamiliar. Like I said, Rod and I early on, for all the stuff that we were showing that you could reference documents and certain things and be able to put it in there. And the way that you were doing it, Rod, you were converting PDFs into JSON-L. Am I?
Yeah.
We're sort of going on that road. Yeah, JSON-L to be able to do it.
Right.
That's pretty slick on that.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it that way, or you can just use one of the Python libraries that can read a PDF. No kidding.
Yeah.
Read.pdf or read_PDF or whichever one it was. I think it was PyPDF2 or something like that. And now you can directly read the contents of a PDF and send the whole contents of that on to GPT. But now let's back up a second, though. Why do that? One of the things that we can do, I'm not going to demo that right now, but why you have to pull the entire contents of a PDF and send that as a prompt, which becomes computationally and even, I won't say financially expensive, because GPT prompts are relatively dirt cheap, in the pennies per 1,000 tokens. But essentially, if we're taking all that context and sending it to ChatGPT, why not instead throw a RAG model on it? And now you're using an embedding model that will only pull the relevant parts of that document and send that on with your prompt to the LLM. And I think that's kind of a natural evolution of what you've seen me go through here. So I started thinking about, how do we apply this with security? And actually, my supervisor, my manager, Lily Davudian, asked me, Robert, at our next team demo day, because we do demos in our team and demo to our teammates, she said, I want to see ChatGPT integration with Sentinel. If you think that's something that we can do. And believe it or not, I asked Schnegs, Jeff Schnegelberger, and he showed me something that he had done, which was using a playlist or a playbook in Microsoft Sentinel. So active playbooks, and we'll drop into I think I've got it in here, ChatGPT. Do you mind if I turn off my camera with that? No, we're good. So the ChatGPT playbook. So basically what it does is that it says ChatGPT completes your prompt. So essentially at the top of the Logic app, you have the Microsoft Sentinel incident is the starting point for the playbook or for the Logic app. The next one is it's going to take information from that Sentinel incident, and we're going to create a prompt that we're going to send on to the GPT-3. In that case, it was GPT-3 model at the time. And then the answer that ChatGPT responded with, now we're going to do something with that. And I think, Rod, it might have been you that actually demoed some of this as part of like a SOC GPT or something where you could do this and have it send an email on your behalf about the incident to a team, or post it in a Microsoft Teams chat or something along those lines. Am I correct that was part of your own methodology?
It was. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I found, though, was that this GPT-3 completes your prompt part of the app, this widget, failed for me over and over and over. So every time I tried to run it on an incident, it would just fail, and I couldn't figure out why. So I found, okay, well, I'm pulling incident title, incident description, and incident entities. And it said you have exceeded the token limitation when I looked at the logs on it. So the token limitation at the time was, I think, 8192 tokens. Well, what in the world am I sending it that's more than 6,000 words? So I decided to do a little bit of investigating, and I knew that it had to be in the information here that I was sending it. Incident title, incident description, entities. Okay, that sent me down another rabbit hole. Okay, well, how do I find out what the entities are associated with this specific incident? All right, so I searched for Sentinel REST API. Most of our Microsoft offerings have a rich API on the back end, a REST API that allows us to interact with those services from within code. So it talks all about the service or the REST API and how it works. And for example, I went to incidents and went to overview of incidents, and it taught me essentially what the code is to list, like in this case, list all incidents or get a specific incident. So on this page, it lists a lot of strings, a lot of parameters. but it also provided a little bit of code.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think I probably used OpenAI or GPT to assist me in writing most of the code. Again, I'm an AI engineer and a developer, but I use Copilot solutions and I use GPT all the time to assist me in writing code because it's that efficient and that fast. And why wouldn't I, as long as it works? So what I did was I started tinkering around with ENVs. I started tinkering around with the API just to see what information was included in, say, a Sentinel incident. So I'll show a piece of the code. It's kind of verbose, but actually not terrible. So what this one's going to do is it's going to pull alert details from Sentinel API. It's essentially using a client secret, a client ID, a couple of variables that I've had to put in another script so I don't accidentally expose them here today. I have to get rid of all this if I do, but no big deal, right? We've all done it. But essentially, this is going to allow me to pull this Sentinel incident, or correction, the entities about a Sentinel incident, about one of my incidents in Sentinel in the interface. Well, I can access all that data on the back end with code. Let's see what that looks like. Incident entities full.py. All right, now that's a lot of information about this specific Sentinel incident. And obviously it's not in what I would call a human readable format. It's in JSON format, right? Start with a bracket, entities, and then it just goes down and lists all the entities that were associated with this specific incident. And so all the code is there. I mean, all the information about the incident is there. Now, I might not use this information, at least not in this format, if I was going to investigate it. And I thought, okay, well, if this is what's overwhelming the token limitation, well, what if I just cleaned this up a little bit and made it look like I would do it?
Pretty command.
Right? So I just built kind of a filter. And this is what it spat out.
Yeah.
Right? Much cleaner, much more readable, entity ID, entity kind, and the name of it. I still don't have all the context, though, about this incident. I just have the entities and not all the information about the incident. So I learned that the pieces of a Sentinel incident are essentially the alerts involved with the incident, the incident details, incident entities, and then incident relations. Okay, so the relations of how all of those parts are connected. So what I did was I wrote a script that orchestrates a transaction between my code and the Sentinel API and OpenAI. And at first I was doing it with the filtered versions you see here. And then, of course, once we got access to the GPT 4.11.06 preview model, well, I have up to 96,000 total, words, or 128,000 tokens worth of context that I can interact with and send. And what I do is I basically say, hey, for this given incident, write a detailed timeline, an incident report, and maybe give me some remediation tasks or create an executive summary. And I was hard coding that into it as the prompt. And that's kind of where this whole process kind of got started.
And I can tell you what the value of this is. This is really cool. You got two things right here. First, Rod, correct me, and actually, Robert, you correct me too. Copilot for security. This is what this is doing for you. This is what it's doing for you by being able to do this stuff. Number two, though, if you don't have Copilot for security and you're a security partner MSSP, you got to find a way to be able to do this if you don't want to be able to do this analysis inside the environment that you're doing. So I want this because if I can export the incident and the collateral that goes with it, I can pivot against this outside of where Copilot is running. So if I'm one of these incident responders, I want this Python to be able to come in and take the data that you piped out Event Hub, raw data export, ADX access, whatever you may be, but I don't want to run Copilot against it and run SCUs against it, and I'm external to the environment that's in question. Bam, I do it this way, and then I can come back and do it. And so if you're an incident response team, this is what's being done. And I've done something similar to this, but if you it sounds like you worked in Sentinel before, Robert. I'm doing this in notebooks, or Juniper notebooks. So I'm writing in notebooks. Yeah, I've been able to do it. Man, I've gotten soft. This is interesting. I haven't had to do this in a while. I've been converted to a salesperson of a sort. But yeah, this right here is pretty good. It is pretty
that'll
good.
actually be our next. That'll be our next stop. Is so I decided, why do it here this way? If I can enter into a two-way conversation with ChatGPT or OpenAI services in a terminal, why can't I enter into a two-way conversation where it's pulling information from my Sentinel incidents and sending that on, and now I can ask individual questions about individual incidents. So
that's assuming that you have. It's assuming that you have the interaction, whether it be lighthousing, to be able to do it right. You got to be able to pull it that way. Yeah, I see where you're going with
Sure.
it. And a lot of MSSPs have tried, they've given up. Some of them do it well, some of them don't, but I know exactly where you're coming from with this, to be able to pipe this out, to be able to do it.
I think the value right now of doing something like this is that at a time when the Copilot for Security, when it was released, obviously it was released in IL2. So you've got a bunch of government organizations that are really interested in this product, and it's not available in their clouds. Yeah. But some of the technologies, the backend technologies that are incorporated into it, are currently available in those government clouds. And all I'm doing is using what's currently available to broker that same type of transaction on the back end. Now, as you said, using a notebook to do this feels a lot more hacky than doing it in a nice terminal or a nice window, from within your browser, and using that streamlined Copilot for Security interface. Copilot for Security is the Rolls Royce, and what I've done is I've pieced together a bunch of parts and built something that just barely runs, and only does it in a very fine range, but it works, and it works very, very well for what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, no. When I say notebooks, I use notebook basically as a scratch pad. So as I'm going through, you can marginalize and say, okay, that piece didn't work. Let me come in everything out between here, loop it down. That's why I do it, because I can't keep. I'm terrible at VS Code. I got to get better at keeping my terminals and resources. But yeah, this is great. In my mind, I'm thinking, if you haven't listened to any of our previous shows, we got to introduce you to Chris Elps. Yeah, we got to introduce you two together. Right, awesome. Chris, you think?
Yeah.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, you two together. Yeah, you guys could do some stuff.
Dr. So this is it in a notebook, right?
So what you're looking at, Rod, what you're looking at right now is my notebook. So just going into Sentinel, I could go to notebooks and then launch it directly from there. Mm-hmm. So this notebook has a couple of scripts in it, one of which is this, what I'm jokingly calling faux pilot or fake pilot, because it's funny to me.
I like that. It's very good.
Yeah.
So using faux pilot, and what faux pilot's doing is brokering that transaction for a two-way chat between the analyst and asking questions of the LLM specifically about our Sentinel incidents individually. So if you can see, I love this piece here. This is one of my favorite parts of the whole thing. I'm actually retrieving the secrets from Azure Key Vault. So because I'm using this in a notebook, in an Azure window, I'm able to use that managed identity to authenticate to the Azure Key Vault service and pull my secrets from there, so they're not embedded in this code. So one of the cooler features of it. But then I identify a whole bunch of methods to communicate with with my Sentinel incident. We see some of those there, pulling details, pulling incident alerts, entities, relations, just like I showed in that other document or in the VS Code. I identify a way to communicate with the OpenAI service And then we define our main function. And all we're doing is it's going to ask me to enter the incident number that I want to analyze.
Mm.
It's going to compare the incident number that I give it with the UUID list of all the Sentinel incidents that are in my environment.
Mm-hmm.
So then it can identify the actual Sentinel incident by the UUID, which is how all of this is done on the back end with the API. It's going to pull all the details about that, the alerts, relations, details, and entities, and then hold that in memory as a value. And now it asks me a question. What would you like to know about incident number? And we're going to enter our incident number, or we're going to enter the our prompt about that incident number, and it's going to send that to OpenAI service with this as the prompt. You're a cybersecurity expert using Microsoft Sentinel. Consider the user request below and respond to their request regarding the specified incident. It's going to take the combined info of the details, alerts, entities, and relations, and it's going to tack all that on to this large response, or this prompt that we're going to send to the LLM. And then it's going to essentially, it's in a while loop, and it allows me to communicate back and forth with it.
Does it call similar incidents, like when you close an incident in Sentinel or you just close the incident and go back and reference how a similar incident was resolved and the status of it, benign, false positive, true positive, things along that line? Can you go back and reference that? Sounds like you can, to be able to go do it. I think what I'm trying to ask is, will it go look at similar incidents numbers if it's doing the UUI? But probably not, though.
I'm not sure I quite grasp what function it is that you're looking for.
Yeah. I like to see how related incidents are closed by humans, to go back and say, hey, it was closed as benign, it was closed as low, but I'm seeing this behavior. And I like looking at things that act as a precursor to an attack. When you look at the MITRE people, they're doing discovery, they're doing recon on you, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, I mean, everything about that Sentinel incident, regardless of where you go, as far as I can tell, regardless of where you go in and what you update within it, still stays stored within that interface. So yes, I can go back after I close something out, and it still exists in code. It may not show up here in my window, but it still exists in the code, and I can generally hit the incident or the API and view details about that incident.
Yeah.
I apologize. I'm having to bring my notebooks up because I had my terminal up and it said that it didn't want to run my code. Didn't want to run the terminal there in it. But so what this is going to allow me to do is enter into a back and forth about a particular incident. If I drop into my Sentinel interface, when we see incident number here, well, that's the incident number that we're referencing. And that's just a tiny little chunk of all that JSON code about this incident. But I use that, and then that pulls that, or it matches that number with then the UUID for that incident. That's why, because it was not running. So we'll bounce out of this for a second because I want to show you something really, really cool while this is starting up. And this is kind of where I see the next steps, where the next phases, the next generation of where this is going. I raise the hairs on the back of security and IT people's necks when I say, I want to see us bridge that gap between security and AI operations. I would, in fact, if the AI is smart enough now, and remember, it's the dumbest now it will ever be. It's only going to get better from here, and it's already incredibly capable. If the AI is right now able to analyze an incident and tell you what you should do with it, and what remediation tasks should be knocked out, as long as it has the same context that you might have, I'd love to see a self-managing data center. Remember, I told you that I started with building an OpenStack cloud. I configured a bunch of servers into an OpenStack cloud, one big homogeneous environment where everything just works. but it's all code on the back end, and the code's all predictable. And interestingly enough, the LLM knows what the code is. As long as I've identified what various services are and what they do, why not ask it with that script that I told you about, my little Jarvis script that writes Python code? Why not ask it instead to write PowerShell code and say, for this particular incident, you've created this remediation task. Why not write a script to knock out that remediation task and let it remediate these itself, bridging the gap professionally? And now imagine, so you've done that, you've remediated a risk. What if we could use something like an attack IQ or something like that automates pen testing of this thing, throwing threats at it over and over, which would essentially turn our data center, throw our security apparatus almost into an immune system, where it's constantly learning what these threats are, seeing, responding to them, and hardening itself against them, and constantly analyzing its own environment, responding to threats on the fly. That, my friends, is honestly how I believe we as security and IT professionals are going to get ahead of that AI curve, that adversarial AI curve, with generative AI, by automating these processes and allowing the AI to essentially do the interactive work itself.
Especially, you said it's self-managed, and to the security people that are thinking total autonomy, that's not what he's getting at. And I think where Mr. Disney is going is that a two-tiered SOC operations, where the automation is a low and informational, that we get rid of that noise and look at the trends that may say, the biological aspect of it, people will take care of the medium, highs, and criticals. But these things right here is how you build your immune system up, right? I don't want my immune system built up on a fatal disease. I want my immune system built up on smaller things to make me more resilient to the bigger things that come. So I see where you're going with it, but I think it's going to happen. You're going to have a huge amount of automation and if you're still thinking SOCs are brick and mortar, true, but there are more ones and zeros. And so an automated first tier, second tier, before you get to critical, before you get these things, it's going to come where it does constantly attack and maybe look at the adversarial tactics that were in your environment and continue to run those to see if you're vulnerable, rather than sit back and detect, right? I don't want to detect when the person's this far down the goddamn kill chain. I need someone to be a little bit more in front of it and keep running it to see if I'm immune. That's what you're getting at. Keep running this to see if I am still resilient against this, because tactics change, but tools stay the same, right? People still using Mimikatz, still Cobalt Strike. People, because right now, one of the things I'm starting to see in the wild a little bit more, and I know we're up against time for our listeners, is that you're living off the land. You're using WMIC. You're starting to use more PowerShell. You're starting to use these commands that are inherent to the operating system. So I'm not going to bring a tool that's going to tip you off. If you are an administrator out here, and I'm not judging, but you're still using RDP throughout your network, and you got localized administrative passwords that are shared across machines, you're asking for it, and you're going to get it. And it's coming sooner or later, right?
That's right. Now, what if you could have an agent that simply said, "Hey, this is what's happening. I've spotted this. Would you like me to resolve this?" And you could choose, show the code, show me the Azure PowerShell code or the Azure CLI code that it wants to execute, and the human in the loop can say, "Okay." Now, at some point, we may not even need that level of it, but for now, obviously, for risk aversion, for risk mitigation, obviously, we can keep that human in the loop or on the loop to at the very least observe, if not be directly involved. But instead of having an analyst have to go in and write that specific to the type of the machine that it was and the task that you want to take, just have the LLM do that, write that, and then you could simply choose to execute it after review. And that's kind of what I'm proposing. And before I close out, I just want to show you, what if instead, additionally, I could write a script that would automatically create a report or create a task list and have it inject those directly into the Sentinel API? Because believe it or not, the information in a Sentinel API can go both ways. you can read from it, and you can also write back to it. And this is the incredible capability that I'm about to show you that I believe will end up as a highly valuable feature in Copilot for security. And that is, you can see on this execution incident on one endpoint, you can see that we've got view full details of tasks. And then down at the bottom, well, under comments, you can see an executive summary in a nice format. Let's go take a look at that incident. So yes, I ran that script on this specific incident. And under activity log, instead of having to analyze through all of these pieces or go to logs and have it do the hunting for me or do queries, instead, this is what I get as a result of running this script and having it inject my executive summary with an incident overview, incident timeline, and remediation tasks, and even a recommendation of should I dismiss this, remediate it, or escalate it to tier 2. Let's take a look. An incident titled Execution Incident on one endpoint was detected on December 16th, 2023, with a medium severity level. Incident involves PowerShell activity on a machine. We can see initial assessment of a remediation checklist. And even at the bottom, recommendation. Given the nature of the incident and the potential for security breach, it is recommended to proceed with remediation. Now imagine if an analyst didn't have to come in, log in, and investigate this themselves, but it could already be done the moment they arrive at their terminal. So what if remediation tasks? So I figured out how to individually parse the tasks by giving ChatGPT a sample JSON document. Isolate the affected endpoint, supercomputer, to prevent any potential lateral movement. It named the actual machine that I need to isolate. It showed me the file hashes. It actually announced my account, RobDI, to check for any unauthorized or suspicious actions. Now I'll throw that Jarvis app at this that can, for each one of these, execute write a Python script, a PowerShell script that will execute that action. And I think you see the power of what we're doing. Instead of 15, 20 minutes, an hour of investigating, we could potentially have an LLM do all that investigating upfront and even give us the remediation recommendation. And I
So
think
how much does this cost? Because that's going to be the next question everybody has. I'm not burning SCUs, but how much does this cost?
Do you want the actual answer? I mean, we won't answer it. Let's not do that right
Out
now.
of curiosity, does this take into account the context of the environment, like the nuances of like VIP accounts or high value assets that you don't necessarily want the automation to affect? Does that take into consideration the bigger picture there?
So I'm not sure where the high value assets nomenclature, where it's actually tagged in the entities piece. We could go back and look at it,
Okay.
but if it's there in the general incident information, then it could be identified that way as well. I mean, because it includes everything from the incident severity, who it's assigned to. We could assign it to a team automatically, depending on what we were using as our backing store for the LLM. Maybe we throw a RAG at it instead that includes all of our onboarding team or all of our teams, what the tiers are, who the analysts are, and you could automatically assign it to those based on their workload.
That's awesome.
And here what I did was I went to an incident that said it had a suspected flipper 0. And no kidding, you just saw me type in a prompt that says, what's a flipper 0 and why would it be concerning if it were seen on my machine? What MITRE attack stages were accomplished? And what steps can I take to remediate the incident? Well, it told me it's a portable multi-tool device for pen testers and hardware geeks with a range of protocols. It's a legitimate tool for security research and testing, but in the wrong hands, it can be used for malicious purposes. If it was detected on your machine, it could be concerning for several reasons. And it names those. MITRE attack stages accomplished, 1091, replication through removable media. It gives me remediation steps, and it does all of this in natural language. So this solution right now could potentially bridge a gap, just with a tiny little bit of capability in lieu of Copilot for security, until people are ready for the Rolls Royce, until it's deployed, in government clouds and in the higher impact levels. It's definitely not a drop-in replacement by any means, and you're only looking at a tiny capability. But I think we're right on the precipice of being able to use these capabilities, and it's a way that people can start using an LLM and integrating the force multiplying power of generative AI today with their security workflows, getting towards that end result, that end kind of dream or vision of being able to fully automate your data center and have human on the loop.
Well, we had a comment from the audience, and I this is where I completely agree. We need to use the tools at our disposal, and AI is one of those tools, right? And so the comment was that this individual has seen a lot of people getting hit recently, people that aren't using AI, and that is a tool that we can use to make our security better within our environments without having to do all the things, right? So
yeah, I saw that phrase recently or that quote that said, will I lose my job to AI? Well, maybe not, but you could use it to someone else who does.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And so anybody using a force multiplier, I mean, imagine being able to enter a bench press competition with a hydraulic jack. I mean, that's what we're talking about doing with generative AI.
I like to think I'm coming to a bench press contest with shorter arms.
There you go. Better leverage. That's a force multiplier too.
Well, Mr. Disney, Robert, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been one of our definitely deepest dives we had this year so far, and I see a lot of value in this, and I also see the future, whereas, you could say Copilot for security, this is the thing that's taking that thing and doing it for you. But what about the folks who, for technical reasons, adoption reasons, cannot get to it, but have the skill to be able to do it? Bridging Solutions has always been a viable place where it's, hey, I'm going to build a shim. If you've been around long enough, I got to build a shim in between this and that to get this to work until we can get it to work. This is pretty cool. Definitely probably ping you on the backside to ask you some questions, but I definitely want to introduce you to one of our guests who does this. Chris is someone that you guys can talk for hours, it seems like, being able to do this. Any parting thing for our guests before we go ahead and let everybody get back to their dinner?
So I did grab your GitHub repo, by the way, for a faux pilot. I'm going to put that in the show notes. That's okay, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep. I'm giving this thing away.
Everyone.
Yep. Giving it away. So enjoy it, try it out, test drive it, play around with it in your own environment. Hope it works for you.
Sure.
Yeah. I just think that we're at such an amazing point in history where we have the ability to have something else do human level analysis for us. I think it puts us in an amazing point. It also gives us an incredible amount of responsibility, right? With great power comes great responsibility. One of those wonderful Marvel phrases. If we don't, our adversaries are not going to be swayed by international regulations. They're not going to be swayed by the possibility they may break our things, because they want to break our things. So if we break a few things along the way, and I hate to say that the way it sounds, but we've got to go all in on AI and fight fire with fire, and be ready to find those points where things might break. I've been doing this now for almost 2 years with this stuff. I see very, very few hallucinations. I know everybody's worried about hallucinations with AI. I see very few of them unless I turn the temperature way up and ask it to be super creative, and then it can spit some things out that are inferred rather than maybe from its training. I encourage everybody to get on board, to get on top of this, to get familiar with AI, and it's going to create a different way of interacting with our own data, of interacting with Productivity Suite. We're going to have to be productive in a different way. That thing of having to think through, what could I ask AI to do for me in this moment, is something I think we all are going to have to start asking ourselves, of how can I use this tool to do the heavy lifting for us. And I'm for anybody out there. I mean, look me up on LinkedIn, hit me up on the mic, at Microsoft, for my Microsoft folks out there, and look forward to answering any of your questions about any of this stuff.
Everybody should follow you, Robert. And
Yeah, sure.
I wanted to give a very specific shout out to you for making yourself available. So thank you for that.
Look in the show notes for his LinkedIn profile link. I'll put it in there as well.
And he just gave it to you guys. If you're looking for what sustains your career, someone had to be able to advise this.
Yeah.
Because until not too far in the distant future, but coming, AI is going to run assessments of your environment. They're going to come in, they're going to drop, and they're going to go look, and they're going to tell you. Now we're doing it manually with CSPM, exposure management, choke points, but this thing's going to go through and look, and it's going to be able to analyze based on how you operate day to day. You may have a secure score of 100 on Monday, but the way you go about your business on Thursday, you're down to 52 because you're opening up, you're doing batch processes, you're opening this. It knows, oh, every so often this occurs. Maybe I piggyback the backup. Maybe I put something in the backup to be able to go do this. And so, I think AI is going to be able to do all things around hacker prevention, detection, everything except for one. Why? Why is an emotional based thing? We see the hackers, how they did it, when they did it,
Yeah.
what they use, but we always go back. Why did they do this? You can't dumb down to nation state. I just want to hurt you, or money, or something. Why may be, oh my God, they setting us up. They got us looking here, but they're really going here. So the why is when I know that AI is probably going to have us.
And the first thing those hackers are going to do are going to figure out if that environment is using AI or not. And they're going to be a little bit more tentative if they are. So.
Yeah, they're going to be absolutely more tentative because one of the security features in Copilot for security is the spin. If the spin goes astronomically, you're going to go, it's like detecting a coin miner. Like, what the hell's going on in this? But sir, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. To our listeners, I know we went over, but this was necessary to make sure you guys got the goodness of what he was trying to show us today. Robert, I'll be in touch, man. I want to pick your brain on a couple of things, and have fun out there in Colorado. Last time I was there, like last year, I came up to Estes National Park to run a half marathon up in Estes. I tell you, that altitude had my carburetor struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it did mine too. That's why I live in the Midwest now.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, everyone, thanks for listening to the show. Yeah, we went over. This is one of our longer ones. We appreciate everybody staying on in attendance. We'll see you guys next Monday. Have a good one.
Next Monday. Goodbye.